Be seated. I wouldn't make you stand through the whole sermon. Many of you, the last time I was here, remember that I was talking about using my tablet and how I had finally gotten used to the electronic age and everything was fine and it was working and so on. I'm back to paper. The wonderful computer people upgraded the program that I use to get it from my computer to the tablet. And thus it would not go to the tablet. So I'm back to paper. Talk about resurrection. It's reality. What does this resurrection really mean? What do we mean by resurrection? Well, there's the spiritual and historical concept of the risen Lord who raised from the dead and spent 40 days with his disciples and taught them and helped them move through their lives. Or then there's the daily resurrection that we find in today's world. We sometimes get resurrected from electronics to paper. Or from with this or that to something else. So there's many ways of defining resurrection. I kind of like both. I kind of like the historical part and the spiritual part, but I also like the concept that we are daily raised to new life, that we are daily given new life. So, the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ is real. It's real enough to have the stories written in the 4 Gospels. Do you know how I learned the 4 Gospels? This is an aside. It has nothing to do with a sermon. It was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Saddle the horse and we'll all get on. Anybody else get that way? But anyway, the 4 Gospels all tell the story of the resurrection of Jesus in different ways. You've got Mark and the terrified women. You've got Matthew, earthquake, and the guards that fainted. Luke felt like an idle tale and was rejected by Peter. And John, the loving gardener, who was finally recognized by Mary as the Lord. She thought he was a gardener in the area. All of these stories hold a promise of many things. All of these stories hold a promise of new life, of hope. Frederick Buechner once wrote that all the death there is, set next to life, would scarcely fill a cup. That's something to think about. It's something to think about how we view death in our world today. If we are taught some things by the resurrection of our Lord, it teaches us to exchange our story, to exchange the stories that we have that might include death, anger, hatred, divisions, rejection. It might encourage us to exchange all of those things that we struggle with in everyday life. Or it could help us to exchange our denial of basic human rights, of life, of liberty, pursuit of happiness, equity, denial of the destruction of our only home, this planet, or the destruction of relationships because somebody is different than us, immigrants, LGBTQ people, or the disparity between rich and poor. So resurrection can be almost too negative to handle. And yet there is a basic message that comes from the resurrection that is extremely important. Life can and will be hopeful, fulfilling, constructive, and joyful. All of those other things that I mentioned that are negatives in life can be turned around. If we are willing to accept the resurrection and the life and the teaching and the gifts of our Lord Jesus Christ, we will find life full of hope, fulfilling, constructive, and joyful. That's the good news. And that will all replace all of those negative things that we struggle with. My Lenten discipline this year was to get rid of the word anger in my life. I didn't realize how hard that would be to overcome. I'm angry, I'm mad at that person, I'm mad at that event, I'm mad at this, I'm mad at that. To get rid of that anger and using that word, mad or angry. In short, the message I think that we get out of the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ and the ministry and life of that human being and of that special spiritual being. The message in short is love triumphs. Love triumphs. The love of Christ can overcome all of the things that we are struggling with daily in our lives. The love of Christ can teach us how to love one another and share with one another and be with each other. To be present to those who are around us and those that we may not even know. Listening to the news coming up here today, I was astounded that in Sri Lanka, after 10 years of peace from their civil war, churches and hotels were exploded by people. They were full of people. And they were injured, and there were over 200 killed in those attacks. Love can triumph over that kind of negativity. Love can triumph over all of the things that we have going on in our lives and in our world. Love can move us a lot further than anger or frustration or fear. Love can move us into new relationships and new strengths in our lives. It's because of that love and that ministry of Jesus Christ that I am committed to taking steps to try to preserve our earthly home. It's in danger. But it can't be done by trying to hammer it home to people. It has to be done by recognizing that the love that our Lord teaches us will overcome the negative approaches to what our world is experiencing. So love triumphs. The love of God for all of us triumphs. The love that God shows us through the life and the death and the resurrection and the ascension of our Lord Jesus Christ as God's Son. That's worth celebrating. For me, that's what the Easter message is. God's love will move us into powerful and new ways of living in our lives. Amen.
Amen.